Hello friends, I'm Texe. Great to be with you here at Power of Prophecy as we expose the darkness and uplift the light that is Jesus Christ. You know, one of the things that has most disturbed me in the past several years is the incredible movement toward what has to be to become the most horrible tragedy of our day, and that is the literal building of concentration camps in America. You know, the Bible prophesies hard times for all people on earth in the last days. And Christians, until Jesus comes to gather us up again, will not be immune from tribulation. It says in Revelation 13, verse 7, that the beast from Satan, he will make war with the saints and overcome them. It says power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. One of the verses that has always broken my heart when I read it is Isaiah 57, verse 1, where we read simply, "The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth to heart." The righteous perish, and no man seems to care. You know, I don't want to be in the predicament of standing before my Lord and Savior one day in judgment and he telling me, "You didn't care, Texe." Some years, in fact, as a young man, I began having dreams. Now, I'm not a very mystical person, believe it or not, but I had dreams, and they were of a strange character, and I had the same dream over and over again. It was a dream that, and by the way, these dreams began when I was only 4 or 5 years of age, and they continued, the very same dream. I was in what appeared to be a concentration camp, although when they began, I had no idea what a concentration camp was at such a young and tender age. But I was behind barbed wire, and there was looked like these World War II type barracks, huge buildings, and everything was so hot and humid. And I looked about the camp, and that's what it was, a camp, and I saw that there were 3 great frog-like creatures like frogs. They were evil, they were ominous, and they were as big as men, even larger than men, and they stood guarding that barbed wire of the camp. And in my dream, I went into the barracks, and it was a barracks that had ceilings only 3 or 4 feet tall, so that you had to bend over. And they had rows after rows of beds. And the people were so miserable, unshaven, despoiled, dirty, lice-ridden, and oh, it was such a tragic scene. And of course, they had on the typical prisoners' clothing, although much of it was ragged and torn, and they were so hungry. Now, my friends, this was a nightmare for me, and it occurred over and over. You know, it was only years later that I discovered in the book of Revelation, it tells us, it gives us the symbolical meaning of that. For in the last days, 3 spirits like frogs come forth out of the very pit of hell. 3 frogs. You see, a frog is considered an unclean night creature. And that was symbolic. And I think God was telling me something. And today, I do care. I take it to heart. And I remember even this very moment, the vividness of my dreams as a young man. And I knew someday I would have to do something about this dream, but I didn't know what. Well, today we're doing something. Today we're going to look at the gulags in the United States of America, the building of concentration camps, the planning, the preparations are already here. And my friends, you must understand what is really going on behind the scenes. We're going to document everything we say today. And you see if this is not so. You decide based on the documentation that you find in this video. Many people deny that there could be concentration camps in America. But listen to me, my friends. We're going to look at the history of concentration camps, and you will see we are not some kind of oasis. We are not immune from the terror to come, for it is prophesied. Proverbs 8, verse 36 gives us a tremendous secret. Why would men arrest, detain, torture, categorize, control, and lock up people behind barbed wire who are totally innocent? What kind of evil motive would such men have? And why would they put thousands to death, such as has been done in concentration camps? Here's what the Bible has to say. In Proverbs it says, all they that hate me love death. All they that hate me love death. These people have no love of Jesus Christ. And because of that, if they hate Christ, they will love death. And they do. You know, some years ago I wrote many books exposing the New Age movement. And these people, the New Agers, seem so full of love. And oh, they just want to hug everybody. Oh, it's such a wonderful thing. They're non-judgmental, and they're not haters at all. Oh, they're lovers. My friends, they'll love you to death. But listen to what Barbara Marx Hubbard, one of the top New Agers, she met with Mikhail Gorbachev at the State of the World Forum. Oh, she's so loved and appreciated at the United Nations. But here's what she says in her handbook of co-creation. She says, we come to bring death to those who are unable to know God. We do this for the sake of the world. The riders of the pale horse are about to pass among you. Grim reapers, they will separate the wheat from the chaff. She says, we will use whatever means we need to make this act of destruction as quick and painless as possible. To the one half of the world who are incapable of evolving, the selection process will be quick. How frightening. How ominous is this? The selection process will be quick. They will do their work of death of the grim reaper rapidly, they say. One half of the world, in today's term statistics, 3 billion people would be put to death. We're unfit. My friends, listen to me. We've had so many wonderful years in America, but Satan's fury can be unleashed in an instant. Don't at all doubt it, my friends. In one moment, you're living in prosperity, driving nice cars, living in a nice home, watching your big screen television, and the next, you're locked up in a concentration camp full of filth with sounds of horrible torture eking at you from just down the hall in those locked rooms of interrogation. I believe there has already been a plan set up. And this plan has been worked ever since World War II for the internment and the torture and the death of those who are the enemy. And who would the enemy be? My friends, I am the enemy, and you are the enemy if we have Jesus Christ inside our heart. If we have the truth, if we have the love of Christ, then those who hate Christ will want to put us to death. Jesus himself said they will kill you and think they do God's service. Yes, Barbara Hubbard says we're doing it for God. And they are doing it for God. Their God, Lucifer, the denizen of hell. Now, some people say, but are we really being tracked and monitored today? Could they be keeping a watch over us? We want you to read what Colin Powell had to say not too long ago, just a few months ago. He was asked about Russia and why there was so much destruction and violence in Russia. And what Colin Powell, the Secretary of State of the United States, said was, the difference is that in America, we're able to track and monitor and capture American citizens because we have a system called the Social Security numbering system. The quote is on the screen for you to see of what he said. Yes, they have you numbered, my friends. And I remember the words in the Bible, Jesus Christ, when they came to get him and took him away and took him to that horrible hilltop called Golgotha, or the skull. You know what the Bible said? It said, he was numbered among the transgressors. He was numbered among the transgressors. And today they have set up a system, I believe, the elite of this world, the Illuminati, and you, my friends, because you love the truth, do not doubt for a moment you are numbered among the transgressors. And we are no better than our Lord Jesus. And this will happen too in due time. You know, I want to show you some evidence of concentration camps throughout history and how men have used tortures. I want you to see something. It is only the few that find Christ. It is only the few that would not touch the hair of a person's head. A Christian cannot kill. A Christian cannot torture. A Christian cannot hurt and maim another human being, because the Holy Ghost inside of you will not allow it. But there are men who think it is no more important than the crushing of a fly or a mosquito in their hands to kill a human being. They exist, my friends. These people are monsters. Our prisons are full of them. And throughout history, they have succeeded in grabbing and conquering the very leaderships of governments. And they sit today in the highest seats of government. Look at this article from a magazine some years ago. Talked about the Chamber of Horror. Did you know that in San Gimignano, Italy, there is a museum of torture and pain? Who would think about having a museum of torture and pain? But the people who run this museum say it is only right that we do so people cannot forget the horrors that have been visited on people throughout history. This is an important aspect of history, and this should not be hidden away. Those who run this museum with its chambers of horror, they say here the fiendish devices here were designed to produce unbelievable agony. Unbelievable agony. Branding irons, thumb screws, skull crushers, tongue clamps. You say, what has that got to do with America today? Let me read you from Nexus magazine, August, September 1998. In a report entitled Recent Cases of the Use of Electroshock Weapons for Torture or Ill Treatment, Amnesty International stated that United States companies, listen to this, are the world's leaders in manufacture of torture devices. Did you get that? The United States of America, we lead the world in manufacturing and selling torture devices. We sell cattle prods. We sell all kinds of instruments of torture that are made in American factories. We even make them in Red China and overseas, and then we put our brand on them and sell them to monstrous dictators around the world today. Let me show you something that came up. I have in my hand a copy of a bill that was introduced in the state of Georgia's legislature recently. A congressman said what we need is to return to the guillotine. And this bill actually, House Bill number 1274, introduced in the Georgia General Assembly of the state of Georgia, their legislature, called for the electrocution or death by guillotine of those brought up for justice. Let me show you. Somebody sent to me not too long ago from a Christian group called the Christian Anti-Communism Crusade. This horrible scene. They said today in the Philippines, in Asia, these scenes are becoming commonplace. This is a communist atrocity and massacre. Look at this man holding up the head. They cut off, disembowel the head of their victims. This literally was done by a group calling itself the Communist New People's Army. Communism is not dead. The monsters who gave us the Soviet gulags are still alive, and I believe many of them are in the United States of America. I was recently reading about the Aztecs of down in Mexico and in South America, the horrible things they did. Did you know that they had concentration camps? and they would take their thousands of victims of neighboring tribes, and they would bring them to their pyramid sites, and they would bring them into the pyramids and keep them in dungeons there until they were ready to sacrifice them. And then they would go slowly up the steps as the priests walked beside them, and then they would be sacrificed to the sun god at the top of that pyramid, and their hearts would literally be cut out while they were still beating. The Aztecs. This is from a book talking about these horrible things. You say, well, those were natives, those were pagans, those were brutes. My friends, let me tell you, not too long ago I was reading this incredible, well-documented book entitled Exterminate All the Brutes. But the brutes, my friends, are not those who run the concentration camps, but those who shall be put in them. This is the story, my friends, of how the colonial powers went into Africa and what they did to the black people of Africa. You say they brought good things to Africa. Well, maybe Africa today is blessed in prosperity and other things, although we see death and torture even by the hands of the black leaders today. Maybe there is more culture, more civilization, more prosperity there than there was in the days when the colonial powers took over. But death is coming to Africa today in huge numbers. This book tells the story about what happened. And I want you to look at some of the pictures in this book. These are actual drawings. An artist actually went there and saw these things and made these drawings. Here, for example, is a British officer who forced the African tribesmen to literally come and worship at his feet. It reminds you what the Nazi guards did to the Jews and the other victims of the concentration camps, and what the Russians did as well, the monsters. Here's another picture of the white gods, so to speak, in Africa, and how they forced the black Africans to come and worship at their feet. And this was the first instance in history in which men subordinated others to them and actually set up concentration camps. And they did set up concentration camps throughout Africa. Now, here's a story, and I want you to understand that no population is immune from this. And I want you to understand that it's not just the German Nazis that ran concentration camps. Concentration camps have been set up by many cultures, many language people, many nations, many ethnic groups have set up and run concentration camps. It seems like Satan never changes. He used concentration camps 1,000 years ago, and he will use them today in America. Here's an article on concentration camps. Look at the face of this victim. This was in Armenia. Concentration camps and massacres were set up by the Turks and the Kurds who took the Armenians. And it is said that as a minimum 2 to 5 million Armenians were massacred. Now, we move on up, and here is from Newsweek magazine back in 1995, a picture of a POW, which is really a concentration camp. This is an Australian prisoner of war. He's about to be beheaded by a Japanese warlord. Yes, the Japanese set up these camps back during World War II. At the same time, they went into China. Here was a story about a book that was out recently called The Rape of Nanking. That's a city in China. It says the forgotten Holocaust of World War II. Yes, the Japanese went into this city and killed and put people in prisons. Horrible things they did to these people. Then we get to Yugoslavia, Bosnia. This is from Business Daily. It talked about Yugoslavia's bloody history. Now, we got involved, in Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina not too long ago. But if you want to look at the history of it, here, for example, during World War II, the dictators who favored the Nazis and the Catholic Church worked very close together and running Ustashi death squads. And they set up concentration camps and began to kill and kill and kill. I know you can barely see the picture. It's not a very good one in the middle, and I'm sorry, it's many generations here. But look at all the dead bodies, the genocide. The Ustasha, the secret police of Yugoslavia, stand over the corpses of Serbs in this hideous picture. Here, by the way, just recently, there's an article from USA Today, and the war that really gathered forces in the 1990s. Look at this scene. Deep in caves, body after body, put in this underground morgue, similar to concentration camps. And then this picture, this is from the European newspaper. Here is a picture. Now we're talking about 1990s, my friends. This is not German Nazis. This is what happened during the Serb-Muslim-Croat war in Yugoslavia, modern-day Europe. And then, of course, we had what happened in Africa just recently. The colonial powers didn't do this, my friends. One black force did it to another black force in the nations of Rwanda and that area of the world. We had a horrible massacre. Look at all of these dead bodies. By the way, this is August 1994, Time magazine. This is the beginning of the final days. This is the apocalypse, said a resident of Zaire, a nation in Africa. Interestingly enough, let me show you another picture too of that. The slaughter was just too much to unbear in Burundi and Rwanda. In one case, they took hundreds and hundreds of captured innocent people, men, women, and children, and they took them into a church. And they said, here you will have sanctuary. Here you will have safety. And then they came in with their machetes and began to cut off their heads and limbs and killed every single one of the people in that church. And did you know that the United Nations sat by and watched it? And the people of Africa today believe that the United Nations actually participated and were complicit in this. And it was for this that we see this article in the Austin American Statesman that says protesters want the United Nations to get out of Rwanda in Africa. And over here we see an African man holding up a sign that says Boutros. He was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and Mitterrand, the President of France, are accomplices of the authors of genocide. They say over 1 million people were slain in Africa, massacred, men, women, and children. Here's just one little article on it. Rwandan killings send thousands on the run. Soldiers bury the bodies of at least 2,000 people killed at camp the day before. And the United Nations was involved. Now, we go back to the 1970s to Cambodia, the killing fields they were called. The Khmer Rouge, the Red Communists, took power in Cambodia. You know, one of the first things they did was close up the cities, and they rewilded. Yes, they had a program called the Rewilding Program, and they rewilded Cambodia. They said, we will not allow anyone to live in the cities, and they forced the people at gunpoint. Those that did not leave, they murdered immediately on the spot, assassinated. And the Khmer Rouge, the communist soldiers, forced the people out of every city in Cambodia into the countryside. And there they began to select. The selection process, it was rapid. It was quick. And my friends, as you can see, this is the end result. A Buddhist monk sits among bones and skulls of the dead. Did you know that in Cambodia there were only about 4.5 million people, and they say that as many as 2.5 million people were massacred? My friends, that would be like killing over 100 million U.S. citizens if this kind of massacre were to occur here. And by the way, this is not the only article. Here from yet another newspaper, and I've just turned it right to the picture. It says, Cambodia, a man cleans a skull near a mass grave at the Chuk Ek torture camp run by the Khmer Rouge, who were responsible, it says here, for as many as 2 million Cambodian deaths from 1975 to 1979. One skull on another. If you look at the evidence, did you know they took, just like the Nazis did in Germany, the Cambodian communists, these Asians, took in their victims, and they had Polaroid cameras. And when they took them in for interrogation, for torture, they made good records. Look at this in this article from Newsweek magazine. They numbered them. They were numbered among the transgressors. And today, there is a museum near Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, and there are thousands and thousands of pictures. They wanted to document what they were doing. Remember what it says in the Bible, all those who hate God love death. Well, not too long ago, this man died. He was called the Butcher of Cambodia, Pol Pot. There he is lying in his funeral pyre, or pyre, I guess you would call it. He died of old age. He was never prosecuted for his war crimes. Here's one more picture I want to show you from U.S. News and War Report magazine at the very bottom there of this page. There again is another site where human skulls are stored now from the torture camps run by the communists. And you know, for years Americans were lied to about what really happened in Southeast Asia. Here's an article that came out, I think this was in the, if I'm not mistaken, was in the Wall Street Journal. Time to tell the truth about Cambodia. There is a smiling Pol Pot. He was the mastermind who put 2 million people into concentration camps and massacred them systematically. But what a nice smile he has. Who can fathom, my friends, the minds of a madman? Well, let's go a little further. Let's go on to World War II now. Move back to World War II during the era of the Nazis. I read this book many years ago by Eugene Kogan. I thought the title was very significant about the Nazi concentration camps. The theory and practice of hell. That's what it was for those people, my friends. The theory and practice of hell. Here's from the New American Magazine. It says, Lessons from the Holocaust. Look at the little children. Jesus said it would be better for a millstone to be tied around a person's neck and they be thrown into the depths of the sea rather than to hurt one of these little ones. But there they are in the concentration camps. Here's the barbed wire. And I'm telling you, my friends, across America, I'm getting reports of similar camps to this that have been built. Look at this barbed wire. You will see what I'm talking about. These camps are being built in America today. You know, not too long ago, there was an article in Newsweek magazine called The Lessons of Nuremberg, and it showed pictures of those who were caught up in the trial there, the Nazis. You know, when those trials occurred in Nuremberg, Germany, we thought those were madmen. They were insane. They were possessed with evil. Surely, that was a unique situation, but it was not. It was not. It will happen again. In 1973, Alexander Solzhenitsyn from Russia was able to publish this incredible book, many, many pages long, and I've read this with tears, my friends. It's called the Gulag Archipelago. This is the story of what happened in Soviet Russia. This is the story of over 2,000 concentration camps. Many people in America know what happened in Nazi Germany, at Auschwitz, and other horrible places. And my friends, I'm not at all making light of the Holocaust that happened in those concentration camps. It was a horror. I'm not going to deny that at all. But listen to me, my friends. The communist concentration camp program made the German program look like almost a picnic. But we couldn't even use the term picnic for either one because both are monstrous and both really did happen. This book documents this. Here's a picture of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. This book came out, by the way, in 1973. I want to read to you just one segment of this, something that Vladimir Lenin, the founder of communism and the first leader of the Soviet Union, said back in 1918. It says, V.I. Lenin, that's Vladimir Lenin, proclaimed the common united purpose of, quote, this is a quote from Lenin, purging the Russian land of all kinds of harmful insects, I-N-S-E-C-T-S, insects, no better than bugs that you squash with your boots. That's what he saw his enemies. My friends, that's the mindset of people that run the camps. Here in this article from the New American Magazine is a man named Avraham Shifkin. His father perished in one of these Gulag concentration camps. And here he is pointing to a map of the Soviet Union. And this gentleman affirms that there were over 2,000 of these camps. Here's a book called The Persecutor. Very interesting. It tells the story of a man who actually was indeed a guard and a persecutor. He worked for the Gulag system. He was a Russian. It wasn't that he wanted to do it, but he said it did give him some advantages. Here's the card that he was given. The card that he was given that made him so very special. They called him a member of the Voluntary People's Brigade. The Voluntary People's Brigade for maintenance of civil order. And by using this card, he was able to arrest any citizen on the street or in their homes he chose to, even without a search warrant, even without a warrant of their arrest, without any order from a court, simply because they had been reported as a potential enemy of the state. You know, we have seen this, by the way, here again, we see human skulls. Is that from Cambodia again? No, my friends, this is from communist Russia. Here today, this is an actual picture from U.S. News and World Report of a Russian policeman, a SWAT team member. Is there any doubt, my friends, that these people are ready to put people in concentration camps? Listen to me. They are already doing it in a place called Chechnya. Here's one village. Here's a mother shielding her child. This is, I'm sorry, it says woman. I have another picture of in the child. This one says woman mourns her son in a devastated village in the nation of Chechnya that is even now under attack by Vladimir Putin, the present head of Russia, with the approval of our own president. Here's an article several years back, 1999. It says, determined Russian troops unload on Chechen capital. And here's some poor peasants there in the nation of Chechnya after the devastation by Russian troops. Now, I want you to know that America, I said, was not immune from these horrors. Could it be that America itself is responsible for having had concentration camps? Yes, we've had them. Here's a book, for example, that documented the concentration camps that were set up for the Japanese Americans during the World War II era. Now, a lot of people say, well, that was a mistake. And even the Supreme Court has ruled they should not have all been rounded up and put into camps. People were wary that they might be more faithful and loyal to the Japanese government than the United States. Can you imagine actual American citizens? Now look at the front cover. We've all been taught that they went peacefully. And while there, they were treated so well. They loved it almost being there in those camps. They were really not concentration camps. They were just internment camps. They were just for detention. Does this man look like he's happy to be going? And look at the faces of the policemen as they forced him into that concentration camp in the United States. I want to show you some pictures in this. My friends, this almost defies your imagination. Here's the wife of the President of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt, visiting one of the camps. Oh, they had the big PR things, the public relations. This was in all the newspapers. See how happy the kids are? See how happy the families are? Why, their benefactor, their great friend, the one who loves him so much, Eleanor Roosevelt, the communist, is there. And then the next picture. When one of the officials of this concentration camp system came to visit, they made the inmates of the Japanese concentration camps in America, Japanese American concentration camps, put up a sign welcoming the man. It says, "Welcome, D.S. Meyer, the great white father." Isn't that just what we did as colonialists to the Africans? Set up concentration camps, tortured them, maimed them, brought them under submission, made them bow down to us as the great white fathers. And here is the gentleman himself. Isn't that nice? The great white father of the Japanese American concentration camps. Now, let's look at some of the things. After some of the prisoners did not want to go there, a riot occurred in one of the prisons at Tule Lake, a place called Tule Lake. I believe that's in California. This just shows what happened. Many of the inmates are laying down on the floor there. Then we have another picture. I want to show these to you because a lot of people just will not believe it. In 1945, some others there attempted to escape, and here they are being hauled back in. Now, I want you to understand, they didn't use regular police. They used prison guards to keep these people in these camps. By the way, see the guard tower there in that picture? The friendly Japanese Americans who didn't mind being there at all, and they just understand everything. Here's a picture from the front cover that we showed you of the man being hauled away by the guards because he was uncooperative. And then finally, here again we have 2 levels of wire to keep the people in, including barbed wire in one of these Japan-American internment camps. Now, and by the way, to show the world how wonderful it was there, those who cooperated were given awards by visiting officials, such as this Japanese mother. But it doesn't look like there's a very happy look on the lady's face. Another program that America is responsible for is something called the Phoenix Program. The Phoenix Program. This book by Douglas Valentine is now unavailable, and I can understand why. They don't want you to know that we set up concentration camps, torture camps in South Vietnam, and tens of thousands of South Vietnamese citizens. By the way, their symbol was the flying serpent dragon, the great phoenix bird. That was our program, run by the Central Intelligence Agency. And it was an assassination program in which all that was necessary is for the people to turn in those that were suspected of not being loyal to the American side. You know what you got if you turned in your neighbor? $6. $6 reward for turning in your neighbor. They have a program now in America under the Homeland Security Act, and it's called TIPS. They want you to turn in your neighbors to the government. The Phoenix Program. By the way, the My Lai massacre was part of this Phoenix program. You thought it was just an isolated incident? No. Here's an article from an American newspaper called The Misery of My Lai. Look at those dead bodies, my friends. And Americans did that. You say Americans would never run concentration camps? No, not Christian Americans. Not thoughtful, loving Americans. I know that. And I know that America is probably the most generous, compassionate nation in the world. But my friends, when the spirit of Satan enters a man, he will do evil. Believe me. He will do brutal, uncompassionate, inhumane things. This is the story of whatever race, whatever creed other than Christianity, whatever ethnic group. This is across the board. And this spirit of evil is going to come again. And it will happen here in America. Now, here is an American who brought some people down to Guyana in South America, and here's the end result. This picture is sort of hard to see, my friends, but these are bodies of over 900 people in Guyana. They went down there to live in what was nothing more than a concentration camp. Pastor Jim Jones of the People's Temple. Did you know that I have documented evidence that this was nothing more than a CIA experimentation site? Central Intelligence Agents of the United States set this camp up. This was not a bunch of cultists that went down there to worship their God-man, Pastor Jim Jones. No, no, my friends. And guess what? The coroner of the nation of Guyana, in a report that has not been in American newspapers, stated that over 90% of the people did not commit suicide, but were murdered. Murdered. And this is just the truth about Guyana. Some years ago, somebody sent me this article. It's from a tabloid, by the way, and I don't put much stock in tabloids. It says, Feds are set to toss millions of Americans into concentration camps. Anyone, it says, that ticks off the federal government could be a victim of these camps. So here we have this huge article. Must have frightened a lot of people who read the tabloid. Normally, as I said, I don't give tabloids any credence at all, but I'm going to give you documentation today that this might just be the real thing. We're going to look at actual facts, not just tabloid, but real stories, real accounts, real evidence today. You know, some people say, well, we might need camps because of so many immigrants coming to the United States that are illegal. We need places to put them. Friends, listen to me. They are trying to give amnesty to all of the aliens. George W. Bush actually introduced legislation in Congress, and the Congress, under Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle, wants more immigrants into the United States. They're not trying to stop these immigrants. Don't let them lie to you and say, oh yeah, we're going to really start monitoring and controlling the immigrants, and if there are too many of them, we're going to put them in the camps. Baloney. Here's an article that came out of the Orange County, California Register daily newspaper. U.S. developing a plan to contain an influx of refugees from Mexico. Baloney. But what the real news is it talks about detention camps. Dozens of detention camps are being built and billions of dollars are being spent. Detention camps. It's not for refugees. They're not trying to put refugees. They don't have enough border patrol to control our borders now. Then an article, I have it in front of me, from the San Diego Union Tribune newspaper. It says U.S. military installations will be used as detention centers, and federal law enforcement agents from around the country could be used if these kind of camps are set up. Then my good friend who publishes the Free American put out this article, Government Admits Concentration Camp Program. Quotes Congressman Henry Gonzalez, Democrat from Texas. He says, the truth is, yes, the plans are here, where you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, evoke the military and arrest Americans and put them in detention camps. That's Congressman Henry D. Gonzalez from San Antonio, Texas. Here's somebody that sent me an article. It says President Bush in 1989 authorized the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to build 43 primary camps having a capacity of 35,000 to 45,000 prisoners each. Then, just as I was going to press for this video in August of 2002, I read a newspaper report that 200 prison camps could be built in the United States and elsewhere in the world for Al-Qaeda Arab terrorists. We go all the way back, my friends. Here's an article talking about the history of concentration camps. Did you know that back in August 3, 1948, J. Edgar Hoover and the Attorney General of that time, a J. Howard McGrath, set up a plan whereby President Truman could suspend constitutional liberties during a national emergency? It says here the plan was codenamed Security Portfolio. Well, the New Age has a plan. Here from the book Dawning of the New Age New World Order, my good friend Dennis Cudahy quotes Lucifer Trust, basically, President Mary Bailey. She wrote a letter in 1970. She says, there is the emergence of a new world order and a divine plan at work. And she said, this plan will take place in the next quarter of a century. Well, a lot of people are worried about an organization named FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. A lot of people say, but FEMA, they're there just for tornadoes and hurricanes to help us. Surely, Texe Bars, you must be mistaken. My friends, I'm not the only one that's mistaken. If I were mistaken, here's an article in Media Bypass magazine, and it says that FEMA is a blueprint for tyranny. This goes all the way back to the Nixon administration, because Dick Nixon set up FEMA, and we know what a great president he was. And guess what? When Bill Clinton was president, when he was in office, he announced that the United States Army Reserve and all of the reserves in the United States would be reorganized to conform to the configuration of FEMA. FEMA is going to control our National Guard and all of our reserve military forces within the United States. And they've set up 10 regions, and I believe there will be concentration camps in all of those. Now, a lot of people say, but Texe, you just don't understand. It's the victims of hurricanes and tornadoes and floods that FEMA is concerned about. Yeah, well, look at this lawsuit almost a decade ago. Here's the news item. It says, victims of Hurricane Iniki in Hawaii and the 92 riots in Los Angeles have settled a lawsuit accusing the Federal Emergency Management Agency of providing inadequate disaster services. After nearly 18 months of negotiations, FEMA agreed to work more closely with local authorities, improve outreach, better train its workers, and blah, blah, blah. It goes on to say, in other words, FEMA wasn't even planning on taking care of these things, but people began to sue them. They said, okay, we'll do a little bit. My friends, about 3% of FEMA's work has to do with disaster preparedness. The rest, I believe, has to do with the concentration camp program and the continuity of program situation. Now you say, Texe, this all sounds too unbelievable. Way back in the Spotlight newspaper, back in 1984, was this incredible report that President Reagan ordered concentration camps. Now this had to do with something codenamed Rex 84. Did you know that Rex is the 10th degree of the Illuminati that was set up in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt over in Europe? Yes, the Order of the Illuminati. Rex, when you graduated to the Rex, which was the highest degree of initiation, you became your own God on earth. That's what they believe. If you could be initiated into the highest rank, the 10th degree of the Illuminati, Rex, you became a Rex, God on earth. Isn't it interesting that in 1984, Colonel Oliver North, working with Senior George Bush and others in the Pentagon, with the approval evidently of Ronald Reagan, it is said, at least Oliver North claimed that, they set up this concentration camp program. And by the way, they mentioned that there would be custodial facilities for dissidents and those who or political opponents, resistors, or outspoken critics of the government in times of emergency. Are you an outspoken critic of the government? Have you written a letter to the editor? Have you complained to a friend or a neighbor about the IRS or what the FBI has done or some other agency of government? You could be targeted for one of these concentration camps. And by the way, they even had a plan for this, and this has been exposed. Eglin Air Force Base. These are some of the sites of these camps, these concentration camps. Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, Vanden Air Force Base in California, Fort McCoy, Washington, Fort Benning, Georgia, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, Camp Crone near Miami, Florida, Oakdale, California, Fort Drum, New York, Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and it goes on and on. You say, well, that was then. Today is today. Here from the Wall Street Journal is an article that says more terror suspects may sit in limbo. White House seeks to expand indefinite detentions in military brigs, even for U.S. citizens. Hey, we got a war of terrorism going on. All is fair in love and war, including putting American citizens who are guilty of nothing, but they're suspected terrorists. They might be associated with a terrorist, meaning maybe they wrote a letter to a friend overseas that was considered a potential terrorist. Or maybe they talked about something that the government didn't like. Now they can be arrested and imprisoned and locked up in a military installation forever and never even brought before a court. Now, you say, friend, Texe, prove some of these things to me. We have a clip now from the hearings, joint hearings of Congress. Senator Inouye of Hawaii was the chairman, Democrat. Congressman Jack Brooks was the head from the House of Representatives. He was there again. This was a joint committee. And they were holding hearings about the Iran-Contra affair. And suddenly, Congressman Brooks began to speak, and what happened was amazing. Listen to this, my friends.
I don't know if in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was.
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
Notice, friends, what was said in this. Congressman Brooks wanted them to bring out in public the fact of these concentration camp plans. Oliver North he's just a quisling. He's just a little military nobody, but he was helping to put these together as a bureaucrat there in the Pentagon and the White House. He called it the project, the concentration camp project, he should have called it. But look at what Representative Brooks says. I was concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in the Miami papers and several others there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan that would suspend the American Constitution. And Chairman Inouye says, we can't talk about that. We'll have to go in private and speak about that. In other words, we don't want the public to know about that. Did you know that recently Newsmax.com on the internet, one of the top news sources, published this article, FEMA's plan for mass destruction attacks? Of course it's true. They gave out a contract for $300 million to build concentration camps. That's what they are. New cities to relocate people. There'll be relocations that are going to be occurring. That's what they're really saying. Now, let's move very fast here. We've got so much information for you. And by the way, I even have a map here in my files. I wish I had time to bring this up to you. These are some of the installations of Rex 84 project, the concentration camp plan for the United States. And as I said, this was even discussed in the Senate floor. Here's in the hearings. Here, for example, are the badges. This is from my good friend Lawrence Patterson's Criminal Politics magazine several years back. Did you know that FEMA, and by the way, look very close at FEMA. I want you to see their symbol. I want you to see their symbol. Do you see what it is? The eagle, but look inside. It's the triangle with the black circle border behind it. That is an occult symbol, the triangle within the circle. And that's the symbol of FEMA. And by the way, these are patches. These are patches for the National Police Force that has been established. Yes, patches for their uniforms. They do have a national police forces. This newspaper put out this magazine trying to warn people. Unfortunately, this is just a small publication. It says FEMA and Fed police patches are red flags. You better watch out for what's coming in the future. And I've got so much for you more, my friends. Here's a letter that gives proof that there is indeed an Army regulation on what is called a civilian inmate labor program. And attached to this was the plan for setting up these labor camps throughout America in time of emergency. This plan several years back was called Operation Garden Plot. Operation Garden Plot. And I have a copy. This actually is from Headquarters United States Air Force all the way back to 1984. Civil Disturbance Plan 55-2 Garden Plot. It was classified, and through the Freedom of Information Act, some people got it unclassified and were able to gain a copy of it, and I have a couple of copies here in my files. This is the actual plan of what will take place when the alarm goes off. Now, I want you to understand, I'm not the first one to expose these things. By the way, maybe I should go back real quickly. In Washington Report, I have it here in front of me. You'll see it on the screen. There's a statement from the editor of this some years ago. He said, ask your congressman or senator to check out Pentagon Manual FM-10. That's yet another manual. It outlines Army operations to round up U.S. citizens and hold them in concentration camps. It is for real. He said, want to bet your congressman and senator will lie and tell you it's just some fruitcakes on talk radio? Yeah, that's what they will tell you. You know, I've been able to receive a copy of this. This was a booklet put out by a man named William Pabst. He sued the United States government. It went to federal district court, and then it went to the United States Court of Appeal. He stated there is a plan for concentration camps in America all the way back to the 70s. William Pabst. I have the transcripts from the court hearings. Even the judge, the federal judge on the bench, admitted it. But they decided that Mr. Pabst didn't really have the jurisdiction and the standing to sue in court. Can you believe that? But it was admitted. And by the way, the government's attorneys, the U.S. Justice Department lawyers fought like tooth and nail to stop the disclosure of this. But I have these plans in this book. Now, that's not the only one. I have so much more for you here. By the way, in this Civil Affairs Operations Manual, it even shows how to set up a concentration camp, where the latrine will be, where the messing or the cooking and eating facilities will be, where the dormitories will be, and so forth. Now, let's move on just a little bit more. I wish I had time to discuss this. Here was a man who sent me massive documentation. He was very high involved in government activities, and he sent me massive documentation. I got this report, too, from Serge Monast. He was writing to this ministry. He was a Canadian journalist, and he found out about the concentration camp program in America, and he made up this book, and he has all kinds of documentation in the book, even with a map and pictures of various things that are going on in this concentration camp program. And Serge Monast made a plan to go across America and expose this. He was going to offer this book right here across America to people. He wrote and told me in a letter, he said, Brother Mars, I am desperate that people know about this. They must learn. America, and even the back of this says, America is in peril. Serge Monast. He was only around 40 years of age, and he was found dead. His wife, his children are convinced he was assassinated. By the way, I've been unable to find the author of this book. I have asked for people on the radio. I've talked about it on my videos, on television. William R. Pabst. I cannot find any record of this man existing today. If you know where William Pabst is today, would you please let me know? Was he picked up? Was he taken away because he had exposed too much? So much to tell you, my friends. Here, for example, this is an actual law of Congress that was introduced and passed, called the Emergency Powers Institute. And it begins by saying, this is actually from the Senate now, report number 93-549. It says, a majority of the people of the United States have lived all of their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have, in varying degrees, been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. The Senate of the United States in this report admitted we still live under emergency rule. All these many decades we have done so, and no one has been told. Did you know that you're under emergency rule? That your freedoms under the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, have been abridged? Did you know that? Here it is in this Senate report. 93-549. By the way, it goes on to say here, the President, under the powers delegated by statutes existing today, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production. That's all business, all factories, everything. Seize commodities. That's food. Seize your food. Assign military forces abroad. Institute martial law. Seize and control all transportation and communications. Regulate the operation of private enterprise. Restrict travel. And in a plethora, that means many particular ways, control the lives of all American citizens. There it is, Senate report. Now, let's keep on going here. I'd love to have at least 2 hours in this video. Had a gentleman who wrote Senator Tom Harkin of the state of Iowa and asked him for me. I don't want you to see the man's name, if you don't mind here, because I don't think that would be right, the gentleman that he wrote to. But Tom Harkin thanked him for writing me. He said he's concerned about these executive orders that give the president such dictatorial authority. And he said, I appreciate your concerns, wrote back Mr. Harkin, regarding the executive orders of the President of the United States. These orders are usually given in times of crisis or war. I have enclosed some information for you and hope it proves helpful. I have 3 packets of information Senator Harkin sent this gentleman. These are from the American Law Division of the Library of Congress, talking about the President's emergency powers over domestic affairs. Here's from the Congressional Research Service, the Library of Congress, talking about the same thing. My friends, this exists. This is from the U.S. Senator Tom Harkin, and he obtained these issues. And then here I have in my hands copies of all of the executive orders that we're talking about today. From across the United States, citizens and friends of this ministry have sent me documentation proving that something horrible is amiss and is about today, and that concentration camps are a reality. From North Carolina, I received these photos from friends of the ministry. I'm going to go over each one very carefully. This couple told me that they, as they were driving in the small town of Pine Bluff, North Carolina, they came upon, sitting on, nearby, there on the railroad tracks, this huge double-decker, these train cars. And they were curious about them. And they went back home and got their camera and came back. There were no guards around to stop them from investigating, so they decided to do a little bit of a spy activity there. This shows you how very large this railroad car is. You can see the woman standing beside it. Notice these are like no railroad cars I've ever seen. Now she told me, and here again, by the way, is the end of one of these cars. You can again see how very huge they are. Again, they're like double deckers. And then she said, Brother Texe, she says, please pay attention very carefully to picture number 4. That's this picture here. we managed to take a picture through a crack of the inside of the railway car. Notice the chains. They appear to look like shackles. I want you also, my friends, to see what appeared to be seats or benches on either side. And my friends, if this was a cattle vehicle, cattle don't need padded benches, do they? This looks like this is going to transport human beings. She said also, the cars are well vented. They have lots of air holes. Now, at the same time, I received so many magazines in here. Here's from a magazine that called Frontline Solutions that talks about solutions for people with large warehouses and inventories and so forth and transportation problems. And in this journal, it talked about the Defense Logistics Agency, which services all the branches of the U.S. military. And my friends, listen, they are preparing, they are computerizing, and they are improving all of their trains. Notice this train car and the military soldiers there. Now, I'm not saying either one of these are trains that would transport prisoners to concentration camps, but they've got to transport you one way or another, do they not? I've also been able to discover that in places like Amarillo and other Air Force bases that have been closed down, there still exists strange-looking aircraft, Boeing 747 wide-body passenger jets, sitting with no marking, sometimes painted solid white, sometimes black, sitting out on the tarmac, out on the flight line, on the concrete of what are supposed to be closed-up military bases. In fact, my friends, most of the military installations and bases that were closed during the Clinton era, hundreds and hundreds of them were closed up, are still being kept for use by the federal government. And many of these are being turned into prison camps. Now, some other friends of the ministry sent me these pictures. And they said, Tex, we saw these, and we can't say for sure, but we heard about the poison gas vehicles where they took the German Nazis took prisoners, and they put them in these trucks, and they thought they were being transported, but then they began to pump Zyklon B poisonous gas into the back of the trucks, even as they were going down the highway. And I was given some pictures of these trucks that appear to be the same thing. Take a look at these. What do you make of that, my friend? Then we go on a little bit more. Here, by the way, here's some other shots. What kind of vehicles are these? Are these for transportation of prisoners? Maybe they don't want anybody to see inside these. Then, from a computerization and computer management publication called Automatic ID News was this article. And I think this is both frightening and very revealing. It says, new DOD, that's Department of Defense system, tracks refugees. Oh, yeah? Well, listen to what it says here. It says that they're at Guantanamo Naval Base, Cuba. Now, this was way before the September 9/11 attack, but they were already preparing. They gave these people, they used them as human guinea pigs and put ankle bracelets with microchips on their ankles so they could track them around the prison camp. And they call this system, so with one computer in one control room, they know where every prisoner, by number, where they're at any given time. You go to the bathroom, they know where you're at. You're eating a meal, they know where you're at. You're on a work detail, they know where you're at. You're trying to escape. They can see you on the computer because of this ankle bracelet with the microchip in it. Let me tell you what the name of this is. It says that this system, it's a human tracking system, but listen to this. It says this is called the Deployable Mass Population identification and tracking system. Mass population identification and tracking system. Now let's get to concentration camps themselves. Do they exist? Here, the Patriot Report, back in 1999, in fact, over 3 years ago, sent me this. They said they have found a concentration camp in Nevada, and they believe it's one of 300 being built across America. And look at the guard towers, and you can see the pictures aren't so clear, but we have a water tower, we have a guard tower, and of course we have the infamous barbed wire. This is back during the Clinton era. It shows that Fort Dix, one of the largest Army sites in the world, has now been turned into the largest federal prison. The largest federal prison. I wrote to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I asked them how large they were. They said, we have over 12 and a half, they wrote back. They told me, they admitted, we have over 12 and a half square miles that's kept, encompassed by barbed wire fences. 12 and a half square miles. How many tens of thousands of people could they put in such a place? Governor Ann Richards, when she was governor of Texas, here's a news item that came out from the Associated Press, said she was touring a prison, the Chase Naval Air Station in Beeville, Texas. It's the state of Texas' first military installation to be converted to a prison, because prisons aren't being built fast enough. Prisons, maybe. Then we have the underground detention camps. My friends, they actually have underground detention camps. And this article from the International Free Press, Serge Monast, remember I told you about that gentleman before, who now has been, I believe, was murdered. He located many underground sites. A man named Richard Sauter, a PhD, wrote this book. I have a copy of it, Underground Bases and Tunnels. What is the government trying to hide? Amazing stories of entire cities. Did you know that there are over 96 cities located underground? Subtropolises, secret installations, deep underground. Here's an article from Time magazine, way back in 1991. It says, Doomsday Hideaway, Mount Weather, carved into a Virginia ridge more than 3 decades ago. A secret bunker still stands ready to shelter U.S. leaders from a nuclear attack. They say that this underground city, and that's what it is, it's not a bunker, it's a huge facility underground. Thousands can live down there. 48 miles from Washington, D.C. They have offices, computer networks. They even have an underground pond holding drinking water, they say, and a television and radio studio. You say, well, that's in case our president, our national leaders need to be protected in case of a nuclear attack. Listen, my friends, there are 96 of these hidden bases. Up in Canada, here's a story out of Maclean's News magazine. An eerie tour of Canada's past, but they're still maintaining. The Cold War is over. There's no nuclear threat from China or Russia, they say, but guess what? They still maintain these places. And as I told you, many of the military installations in the United States are being converted to prisons, or I believe to detention centers and concentration camps. In a book called Future Fire, about military bases and technology, there is a drawing of an underground combat operations center. And you can see floor after floor in some of these underground bases and sites. Now remember, many of these, including all of the Minuteman missile sites throughout the United States, Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, and others, have been closed down, but there they are. Could they not be converted to concentration camps to hold American dissidents and political prisoners? And I'm talking about American citizens, not the Al-Qaeda. We know, of course, that the United States, according to a new report, is building over 200 camps for Al-Qaeda and other prisoners. We know that at Guantanamo in Cuba, you've seen, I'm sure, the news clips about over 200 Al-Qaeda prisoners that were brought from Afghanistan by the Bush administration, and they're still in prison there without charges, without any kind of court hearings. They're just kept there indefinitely, is our guessed. First they were put in what looked like cages, and now they built some kind of a camp system for them. Guantanamo, Cuba. There where Fidel Castro is. He's our pal. We don't have to worry about him breaking in there into that and letting the prisoners go, do we? Here's a letter from a lady who wrote to me. I cannot reveal the name of it, but she told me about the underground subtropolis that is in the heartland of America in Kansas. And guess what? She said they actually had a program on this on the Discovery Channel. The program was called Invisible Places, and it talked about miles and miles and miles of a secret, what is a secret to most people, underground city. And it's evidently built by the billionaire Hunt brothers. Quite interesting. Some years ago, just a few years ago in fact, in the early 1990s, south of Dallas, the federal government spent hundreds of millions of dollars to build huge tunnels under the ground. Here's a picture. This is, my friends, this is out of U.S. News and World Report, November 6, 1995. See how huge it is? You can see the two gentlemen there, the workers working down there, carving out these tunnels under the ground. Now, what was it built for? Well, they claimed that they were going to do 21st century type research in physics. This was where they were going to build the superconducting super collider. Now, without getting into all of the science of that, let me just say that they built miles and miles of these huge tunnels. And then they said they decided not to fund. Our U.S. Congress decided not to fund any more scientific research for a super collider, superconducting super collider. But they still have all the tunnels there. What for? Now, let's conclude with this report on concentration camps in America. You know, we've been warning people about this for many years now. I earlier did a video called Concentration Camps in America, warning about this. But now I believe we're on the very verge of this. I don't know when these things are going to take place. I don't know when the gun's going to go off. But I know there is a secret elite that is planning our demise. You see, we're the only enemies they've got. Why? Because we tell the truth. Now listen very carefully to me. You may be frightened to hear about plans going all the way back to the Ronald Reagan era called Rex 84. And you may be concerned about all of the evidence that you've seen here today. But I want to tell you something. There is a God in heaven. There is a God in heaven. And remember what Jesus said. He said, do not fear he who can kill the body, but he who can kill both the body and the soul by casting a man or woman into the very pit of hell. My friends, don't fear the devil. I love Psalms chapter 116, verses 3 through 5. I want to read it to you because it's so powerful. Every time I would even think about getting afraid, I read this verse to myself. Listen to this. It says, the sorrows of death compassed me, and the pains of hell got hold upon me. I found trouble and sorrow. Then, oh, I love that. I love the then. Then call I upon the name of the Lord. Yea, our God is merciful. Yea, call upon the name of the Lord. Our God is merciful. Here's what I want you to do, friends. Tell everyone you know about the plans for concentration camps. Tell everyone you know that we must educate each other, warn each other about these things. And then I ask each of you to get on your knees and pray to Almighty God and ask him what you must do about these things. I'm not asking you to get guns and rifles and hand grenades and bombs and go fight anybody. I'm not asking you to do that at all. I'm not asking you to revolt against the elite or the Illuminati. I want you to ask the Holy Spirit what he wants you to do. And I believe God will lead you in exactly the right way. And I believe he will lead you down peaceful paths. I believe we're going to be witnesses for him in coming days. I believe we will be those whom the beast makes war upon. But listen, my friends, it says, and this is so powerful, we shall become the overcomers. How do we overcome? Through the power of our testimony. The power in your testimony. And we overcome through the blood of the Lamb. This has been Texe Mars. You've been watching our special report, Gulag, USA, concentration camps in America.